because you cannot talk out of both sides of your mouth. You cannot say, it's not the government's job, and then sit comfortably in your house and watch the world burn. You can't do that. You have to do something. Welcome to the Farmish Kind of Life podcast, where we talk about homesteading stuff and life stuff and everything in between. Join me, Amy Dingman, as we explore big questions on a little farm. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Farmish Kind of Life podcast. I am Amy Dingman. I'm your hostess with the mostest. This is episode 172. It is Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021. How are you today? The topic I'm going to be covering today is kind of us versus them. We're going to be talking about not relying on them, and I mean them with a big T. I'm going to talk about the importance of relying on each other. And when I was sitting making the notes for this podcast, I'm going to tell you, it went some places I didn't know we were going to go today. And it's probably going to get a little spicy. I hope it don't offend anyone, but there we go. But before we get to that main topic, what is happening on the homestead? Thanksgiving is coming in a couple days, and I was thinking the other day about what are some things that I'm thankful about this year, because there are a few things I'm really thankful for, especially this year, especially when I look at the state of the world and things that are happening right now. And I thought about how thankful I am that we decided how many millions of years ago. Okay, it wasn't a million years ago, it was just back in 2007, but we decided to homeschool our kids. We decided to homeschool and unschool our kids. And I was thinking the other day about how glad I am, number one, that my kids were born when they were, and that they are the age they are now as we're going through this, but also that we decided to homeschool. And so much of the junk that some of you all have to deal with right now, we kind of bypass that, right? And I'm really glad we made that decision to homeschool, but the thing that I've found really cool about it is that we've made it through that. I mean, my youngest is a senior this year, and so we're kind of at the end of the game, but we have all this experience, and we can answer questions, and we can give advice, and we can, kind of help people through it when you want to bang your head against the wall and be like, why did we decide to do this? Some of you know that I sit on Jack Spirko's expert council as the homeschooling expert. I wouldn't say that I am an expert. I just did make it through the whole thing, and so I have some experience that I can share. But if you guys ever have questions about homeschooling or taking on that decision, feel free to email me, amy@farmishkindoflife.com. I will sit and talk with you, whether you're excited, whether you're confused, whether you're like, what should I use? Whether you're like, what in the world did we get ourselves into? I can certainly talk you through those things. Or you can message me on social media. Either way. Something else that I'm super thankful for is that we moved to the farm when we did. We moved to this farm 10 years ago, and we learn stuff every day. Obviously, anybody who has a homestead knows you learn new stuff every day. And every year is different, but the fact that we've been here 10 years means that we're kind of established here. So we have the knowledge and we have the experience in some things that we can share with each other. So I just, as the world kind of, some people are always saying the world's crumbling into chaos and some people are looking for a new way to do things. And so they're looking into that homesteading thing. Welcome to all of you that are new to the podcast, because I know a lot of you are new for that reason. You're looking for ideas, you're looking for advice. And so the fact that we moved to the farm when we did means we can help people through that. Obviously, I'm still learning things myself, but you know what I'm saying. So those are a couple things I'm thankful for. So feel free to use me for information or advice or a sounding board if you need it, because I can certainly be that for you. What else can I tell you about? I wrote a blog post the other day about how to make a Christmas planter. And I wrote this because there was someone on a local online group who was asking, where can I get a Christmas planter? And people were talking about where you could buy them and how much they were. And I thought, y'all, you realize you can make a Christmas planter by yourself and it's not hard. And you guys, I am not a crafty person. I'm not a crafty person. I'm not good at decorating. I'm not good at knowing what goes together. I'm not good at picking colors for stuff. I'm not crafty, but I can handle making a Christmas planter. And I'm talking about, some people call them a porch pot if you put it outside. I'm talking about a container with some pine branches, pine stuff in it, decorated with Christmas stuff. That's what I'm talking about. There are people that will spend $60 to $120 on these things. I'm not going to do that. So here's how you make a Christmas planter if you want to know. You find a pine tree, all right? And a great pine tree to pick out is the one that's smacking you in the face when you're mowing or doing yard work. It needs a little bit of a trim, little haircut. You go out there, you take a couple branches off of it, maybe only one, depending on what you want to build. And I'm not talking branches all the way to the tree. I'm talking, the end. We're doing just a little snip here. And you take that pine goodness, you find yourself a container, any container you want. Now, pay attention if this is going to be an inside thing or an outside thing. Choose your container wisely, obviously, but you put some dirt in that container. You arrange pine branches in. Now, if you cut the end of a pine branch, obviously you can peel off those pine things, right? You don't have to put the pine branch in the pot as it came off the tree, obviously. So make yourself a nice little arrangement. And the great thing is that you can redo it a million times if you don't like the way it looks. You'd be like, oh, rearrange, the pine branches. And then you get out your Christmas stuff, your garland or your ornaments or your little, whatever you use, lights even. And you decorate that little planter like it's a Christmas tree. And it's free, y'all. Unless you had to buy your dirt, unless you felt the need to go out and get new decorations, it's free. So that's how I make Christmas planters. I actually always do this with my stepmom and my stepsisters. We do it the first weekend that the guys are gone for deer hunting. That's just our tradition. And so that's what we do. And it's fun. And now I got Christmas planters all over my house. So if you want pictures of Christmas planters I've used over the years, or you want to look at the directions, the super fancy directions that I wrote out, you can go to the show notes or just go to my website, afarmishkindoflife.com, and search for Christmas planter, and it will come up for you. The last thing that I would like to share is that A Farmish Kind of Life now has a group on Telegram. So if you are on Telegram, we have a group there. However, it is a private link. It is not a public group. Some of the public groups that I've been in on Telegram have a ton of spammers, and I didn't want to deal with that. So it is a private group. It's a private link. I will put it in the show notes. It was also in last week's newsletter. If you can't find the link, email me at amy@afarmishkindoflife.com and I'll give it to you. Like if you're listening to this and you want the link, I will give it to you. But it's not a group that you can go to Telegram and search and it will come up because it is private. And we got a great little group over there. We got about 30 people in there right now. We have some great chats. And if you want to get in on that, if you are on Telegram, come and join us for some good chatting. All right, now it is time for the question of the week. And remember, if you want to answer the question of the week, you will find it in my weekly newsletter, which you can get by going to my website, afarmishkindoflife.com, and signing up. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, you will find a sign up. Otherwise, if you're on any of the articles or show notes, it will be at the bottom of the show notes or on the sidebar of the show notes. That's where you can find the sign up. So today's question of the week actually came from the Farmish Kind of Life Telegram group. Cindy suggested this as a question, and I thought it was a great question for us to think about. She said, what is one thing that you did to improve your life 1% this week? So here are 3 responses that I received to that question. Karen said, I'm in the process of expanding my existing garden by 2/3 and redoing all my raised beds. That's what Karen said, and that's awesome. Expanding your garden and growing more of what you have previously grown or adding new things. It's always great to expand what you're doing on the homestead. Dawn said, this is a little different. I decided I would start hiking again, a way to relax solo and in nature. I've been walking every morning and I ordered some hiking shoes, and this week I have walked on the side of the road in my hiking shoes to break them in before my scheduled hike. It's not homesteading, but then again, it is part of my homestead life. Dawn did email me again a few days later and said, well, I did the 8-mile hike. It was awesome. One thing I'm grateful for is that my husband is extremely supportive. I was tired the rest of the day, but I noticed that I'm still feeling peaceful 2 days later. So that is awesome, Dawn. Getting out there and just walking and being able to clear your head is so helpful. And I know that it's not necessarily homesteading, and I don't ever want you guys to think that I'm only looking for homesteading answers. I know this is kind of a homesteading podcast, but we branch out into lots of things here. But I think that's so great you were able to take that walk, and that it chilled you out, because we all need that. And that will help your homesteading life, right? That'll help all aspects of your life. Mike answered 10%, not 1%. I went to a local food bank to get a Thanksgiving turkey. I got there early. They thought I was a volunteer, so I started to help package meals and hand out food. I finally asked, "Who do I see to get my turkey?" The director, who I spoke with but never met, said, "You're Mike?" They thanked me many times over. It was very uplifting when the director told the other volunteers I was not there to help. All the people I'd been working with started to say, "I thought you knew him. No, I thought you knew him." We all had a very good laugh. I'm recovering from surgery and currently have a very noticeable limp. Once the director knew who I was, they got me a chair, hot coffee, and donuts. Their unexpected reaction to what I did was a great feeling. Thank you for sharing that story, Mike. I loved reading that. I love that you were able to get your turkey. I love that you were able to help them. Just a great thing all around. So thanks for sharing that with us. Now we're going to head over to the main topic, and we're going to talk about something that I've titled, "This is Not About Them." So today I'm talking about the difference between relying on each other and relying on them, and how I really believe that healing and progress will take place in our country when there is way more of the first and far less of the second. And I think this is important to talk about because as the world is going through these challenging times and shifting into whatever is coming next, I hear so many people say, "Screw it, I'm just going to lock my door, I'm going to be a hermit." Or, that I'm going to move to the woods and be all by myself because I don't need anyone else. And so they kind of shut themselves off from the benefits of community. And sometimes it's because of this misguided belief that we're not supposed to have to depend on anyone. But what I want to talk about today is there is a difference between learning to rely on each other and learning to rely on them. And when I say them in this podcast, I'm talking about them with the big T, like them. Relying on people with a face and a name that you know, or someone that you could invite over for coffee, someone in a relationship that it's agreed upon and it's a two-way street, is completely different than relying on them, meaning the government or giant corporations or giant systems. Surviving and thriving because you depended on each other was normal back in the day, right? Normal. That's how people got by. And it's even pretty common in some communities still. I mean, take a look at the Amish community, right? That's how they get by. They survive and they thrive because they depend and rely on each other as a community. Community and depending on each other used to be the name of the game. I mean, let's pretend right now that it's 1800 whatever, and you're out on the prairie. Do you care or probably even know what the government is up to on a daily basis? Probably not. But I bet you know what Mr. So-and-so is up to down the way, right? You have to, because Mr. So-and-so and Mrs. Whoever and your family, you're the only ones for miles. You had each other. That's who you had. You didn't have them. Community is give and take. Community is, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. Community is, I'll help you finish siding your house if you agree to butcher and process my deer this year. Community is bartering. It's helping each other. It's following through on your end of the agreement. It's offering help in ways that you can and knowing that other people will help you out when you need it. I don't feel that with the government. I don't feel that with the public school system. I don't feel that with the medical system or the corporate food system. That's not community. That's them. And yet, there's a lot of people relying on those things. And when that system starts to break down, like we're seeing right now, we have a lot of struggle and chaos because people have been relying on them, not each other. And this is important to talk about because I hear people in the survival community sometimes spout off the importance of being able to care for yourself because ain't nobody coming to help you. And while I agree with that, I think some people misconstrue what they're saying. The way that I see it, they're saying, learn to take care of yourselves because they aren't coming to help you. And I agree with that. But I'd like to believe someone is coming to help me. If the shit hits the fan, my community is coming to help me and we're going to help each other. You've seen that happen in times of struggle, right? You've seen the community pull together. I hope you've seen that. If not, you need to get building that community. But I also think it's important to talk about this because there are people out there who will not accept help from others because they have learned that relying on others is weak. Or that if you depend on others, you're taking a handout. Or that you should be able to fend for yourself. And I think they've learned that. In fact, I know they've learned that because in conversations I've had with people in person, they've learned that because of watching others take from the system and everything that comes from that whole thing. Now, I want to talk about some uncomfortable truths here. This is not at all where when I was making the notes for this podcast, this is not where I thought this podcast was going, but we're going to go there anyway. When I talk about relying on the system, we've got the corporate food system, we've got the medical system, we've got the public school system, we've got all these systems, right? And so there's that system. But sometimes when people talk about relying on the system, we're talking about like assistance, right? Assistance that we get from the government. And I want to point out here that I think it's great that there are food banks and soup kitchens. I think it's great there are places for people to get clothing. I think it's great there are shelters for people who need it. I am not against assistance. I just know that some forms of assistance are horribly abused by some people. And I think it's harder to abuse that assistance when it's not done on a large scale by them, right? But, and this is a huge but, and this is where things are going to get uncomfortable. If we are going to be a people who talk about how it's not the government's job to help folks or to bail them out of their personal issues or life struggles, which I agree, I don't think it's the government's job. This is my personal opinion. But if we're going to say that, then we also have to be a people who are actually going to step up and help each other. Because you cannot talk out of both sides of your mouth. You cannot say, it's not the government's job, and then sit comfortably in your house and watch the world burn. You can't do that. You have to do something. Your own little part. You can't talk out of both sides of your mouth. It's kind of like people who will just constantly talk about being pro-life, pro-life, pro-life. But then you also see them side-eye the 16-year-old with the baby on her hip. Y'all, you cannot talk out of both sides of your mouth. And I know some people will say, but we need the government to help because the problem is so big. It's so big, you guys. Y'all, why do you think the problem is so big? How did it get so big? Fixing the problem starts with you building your community. And I don't care if that's the people who live right around you. I do think that's a very important community. But I don't care if it's them or people who are semi-local that have similar interests or like how you do it. I don't care. But if you start taking care of yourself, make sure you're good. Then you take care of your family, make sure they're good. Then you start building that community and you make sure they're good. And your community all takes care of each other. And then we multiply those little communities over and over again. Then we've got less people, a lot less people, that need the government to swoop in and fix their problems. But, and this is an uncomfortable but, I'm making y'all think today. Some of you are going to say, Amy, I can't deal with my alcoholic father who needs help. Or I can't deal with my meth-addicted cousin who needs help. Or I can't deal with my friend who's in an abusive relationship and needs help. Or, Amy, I can't stand my brother who can't seem to save a dime to save his life and he's always in a financial trouble and he needs help. Here's the uncomfortable truth that I want you to sit with for just a minute. Sometimes I think that having the government ready to help others allows us to stay comfortable in our own lives because it means we don't have to step in. Ouch, you guys, right? Is there any truth in that for anybody? And I get that we're all dealing with stuff. Stuff we talk about, stuff we don't. Stuff that's obvious to others and stuff you keep hidden. We've all got it. I've got it. You've got it. And I am huge on personal responsibility and taking care of your life. And then it's your job to make sure you live the best life you can. I believe at the end of the day, no one can make those changes but you. But I also know that some folks need a little more support and a little more help to get there. I also know there are some folks who don't actually want help. They say they want help, but they're not actually ready to make changes in their life. They just want to sit where they are because it's comfortable and it's scary to make changes. I also know that there are leeches that will just suck the life out of you if you let them, all under the guise of helping each other, right? We all know those people too. I also know there's people who fall through the cracks of getting help because of all this red tape and human nature that works its way into the system. And all of this makes the concept of helping each other really complicated because you have to be able to discern who is real and who isn't. And gee, sometimes isn't it just easier to let the government help? Now, I don't want to give the impression that if we all just build our communities a little stronger, that everything's going to be peachy and, unicorn tails. Because there are still people who won't get involved. I mean, if help requires a two-way street, they're like, I'm not about that life. And there are evil people in the world. I don't know if you agree with me, but I believe there are evil people in the world. This is not just peace, love, and happiness. I've talked before about my great uncle he passed away several years back now, and he used to talk about living through the Great Depression and how there were people who pulled together and there were people who didn't. Because when we talk about the Great Depression, we always want to talk about how everyone worked together to pull through, but there were people who wouldn't help. He had neighbors who would not get involved with others. They wouldn't help others. They wouldn't be part of the community. They wanted nothing to do with it. And when disaster struck their family, that community was like, sorry. Because the established community was in survival mode. And this family was like, oh, hey, now we kind of need your help. And the community around them pretty much ghosted them. Helping each other is complicated. We have to take into account our humanness. And geez, pulling the government into it means we don't have to make those hard decisions, right? But here's a really awesome thing about community. We don't have to be able to lift 1,000 pounds individually because we can lift 1,000 pounds together, right? But when they get involved in lifting that 1,000 pounds, the entire project changes, right? We're from the government and we're here to help. You've all seen that meme, right? But here's the thing I keep thinking about. It's like we became this nation where most people want to live in their own little bubbles, do their own thing, and stay completely comfortable because we're our own people, right? We celebrate the individual now because that's progress, right? And then when the shit hits the fan in most people's lives, they don't know where to turn. They're like, help me, what do I do? And the government is more than happy to step in with their 15 gazillion programs and say, we're here to help. But if community is about, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. If community is about relationships, if community is about both parties in the agreement gaining something, what does that all look like when the government steps in? You get help, sure, but what do they get? How do they benefit? And I hope you have an answer for that. If not, I want you to stick that in your pipe for a while and think on it a bit. We have to be willing to dig in and get dirty. Sometimes helping each other means teaching someone to can or answering questions about chickens or goats or beehives or anything like that. And those are the nice and easy and exciting things, right? As homesteaders, we love to answer those questions. But sometimes helping people means something completely different. Sometimes helping people means giving someone a place to stay for a week. Sometimes it means sitting on the phone with them for an hour and talking them through a tough situation. Sometimes it's things that are not convenient for us. And I'm not saying you can or even should help every person who asks you. And I also know that there are people in your life, we all have people in our life that we've got a history with, and helping them out isn't in the cards right now because there's so much healing that needs to take place first. I get that. But helping means getting your hands dirty and doing the work. That applies to individual problems all the way up to large-scale issues. Very often when I talk about the state of the world, I will have people say, Trump is going to fix it. Trump is going to come in and fix all this. We just got to wait. Trump's going to fix it. Pardon me if I step on anyone's toes, but why the hell are we waiting for anyone to fix it? Why are we acting like some white knight is going to swoop in and wave a magic wand and make everything okay? Why are we doing that? Why are some of y'all doing that? This isn't a movie. This is real life. Like, pinch yourself. This is real life. We can sit and wait for some savior to say, ta-da, all better now. Or we can figure out what we can do to make things better. And it might be little, but you can do something. Because once again, this isn't about them. It's about learning to rely on each other. Do you want things to be fixed from the top down or the bottom up? It's just food for thoughts today, my friends. What can you do today to make things just a little better? And what can you do today to help someone out? So there you go. There are my thoughts on us versus them and relying on each other versus relying on them. And that is not at all where the podcast was supposed to go today when I was thinking about this topic last week. But there you have it. There's my thoughts that spilled out today. And just a note, the audience for A Farmish Kind of Life is from all sides of the political aisle. So I'm pretty sure some of you are going to disagree with what I said here. And I might get some spicy emails from some of you. And that's fine. When I talk on the podcast, when I talk on TikTok or YouTube or anywhere you hear me talk, I don't say the things I say to have the final word. That has never been my goal. I don't think there is a such thing as a final word. I say these things to make people think. I say these things to get myself thinking. I say these things because I think these conversations are important to have. And I think that when we can have these conversations, I think we are on the path to making progress. So there you go. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I will talk to you again soon. Hope you enjoyed the show today. To continue the conversation, visit our website at afarmishkindoflife.com. Find A Farmish Kind of Life on social media or drop me an email at amy@afarmishkindoflife.com. Peace, love, and bacon, y'all. Stay farmish.